Monday morning here in Laguna Beach, the Opt-Out Life. Dana, we are talking about side gigs. Tell me about the first requirement that we've come up with that makes a perfect side gig.
Right, the first one is low capital. For the most part, you don't want a side gig that costs you something to start. So low capital to get the thing going.
And low capital ongoing. You don't want to start something that requires you to dump capital in over and over. That's not a side gig.
No, that's a business actually, and that's the thing that people make a big mistake at. Starting something that should be a side gig that turns into a business, costs them more money than they make.
Right. We're trying to make a differentiation between businesses are hard and side gigs should be easy. And if you follow these requirements, you should be able to get into one.
The second requirement I think is really important is that side gigs should have low risk.
Some of our best side gigs have been web publishing businesses where we've taken a skill or a strategy that we know about and just published it online. Very little stress and almost no risk, right?
Right. I mean, people do consulting. We know people that have done courses that they offer as e-learning, written ebooks. All of these things are things that take a skill or an expertise that you have now and turn that into a side gig that doesn't have risk.
Because the last thing you want is to be worried about your side gig on a Sunday night, all stressed out. I mean, that's what a business is. We want side gigs to be easy. That's why we've come up with these requirements that kind of shepherd you through figuring out what they should be, right?
Right.
What's number 3?
The third is not a lot of time. You don't want to have a side gig that's going to take a lot of time, and the less time, the better. And there's sort of a spectrum. Some people are maybe in the beginning going to have to put in a little bit of time, and over the course of that side gig should put in less and less time and make more money.
I mean, everything takes a little bit of time to get going, but over the long term, you need to know that it's going to get to this point where it's only going to take a couple hours a week or a couple hours a month, as you've defined it.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, some people, their first side gig might just be consulting. And if your first side gig is consulting, then you are kind of selling your time. You're just selling it for more than you would get at a job. And that might give you the freedom to break out of the job and freelance. But ultimately, you should be turning that side gig into passive income in some way, like an ebook, a course, publishing a web page that makes money from ad revenue. These are all great ways to create passive income once you've actually made the leap.
And outside of passive income, some of my favorite ones are kind of those weekend hustles, right? I know someone who does wine events on the weekends every now and again, where she goes in for 2 or 3 hours, she's got an expertise in wine, she makes a couple $100. One weekend a month, it's a great side hustle.
Absolutely. We've talked about the first 3 requirements. You want low capital, low risk, and low time. The fourth thing, let's bring it all together, how do we make some money with side gigs?
The income you make from a side gig needs to be consistent and possibly growing, right? It can't be something that goes up and down and up and down, because if you don't know how much you're gonna make every month, then you can't really live the opt-out life.
Right, so a lot of people want examples of that. My favorite example from my own life was I started this free legal aid website, and when I made $50 a month, a few months in a row from just ad revenue, I thought, it was amazing, you know? A couple years later, I was making $500 a month, and I thought it couldn't get any better than that. A couple years later, I'm making $3,000 a month, and that provides me the means to hang out here in Laguna and do the opt-out thing.
I like that because it started small, you know. Consistent doesn't mean that it has to be large out of the gate. It was nice that it was growing, but it started at $50 a month, and that was meaningful at the time. One of my favorite side gigs is where I rent websites out to business owners that I've built, and I sign a 6 or 12-month contract where they're paying $500, sometimes more, every month. At the beginning of the month, I get that check. I don't have to worry about it. It's a great little side gig.
Yeah, I mean, I know people that have side gigs that maybe even cap out at a certain amount, and when that happens, then they keep it going and keep that revenue going, and then put a little bit of time into another side gig, and they stack them. So I know a guy that did a website on publishing ad revenue. That hit a certain critical mass, and then he was building an app that he put on Android, made a couple $1,000s a month more on that, and then he's got another app that he's built for PCs. That's a cool little writer app. He's making a couple of grand a month on that as well.
And it can happen with consulting too, right? Where you start off consulting with one client, that begets another. And another cool one I know about actually is I've heard of one of our guests who makes a couple grand a month as a consultant, but then does these one-off days where they'll fly him across the country, $5 grand for one day for one meeting. It's just kind of a little add-on. And it's kind of become consistent for him too, but he's got the consistency of that monthly income from the consulting, and he stacks on those big dollar days where he's not spending a lot of time to meet some of our other requirements. For more on side gigs and help launching your perfect side gig, get on our newsletter at optoutlife.com.